So this is a quick explanation on how I'm doing my fuel pump system. So right here is the modified, right? I'll explain what is modified on it. It's not much. Uh, don't mind my birds. They're making noise in the background. This is my modified, in-tank reservoir, all right? Here's one that hasn't been modified. And here's my modified top and bottom for my fuel system. All right, here's just the lower half, and I explain the differences. All right, so basically the lower part is simple. It's all apart, right? And all I did to the lower section was remove the this return line that's right here. All right, and you'll see when I explain what I did to that. What I did. So all I did was remove that tube, because that tube just dumps back into the tank itself, and it pushes fuel back into this reservoir. It just recirculates, by pushing fuel into it. All right. So that's that piece. So on this one, all I did was remove that piece, and then the port would just be open to the tank. So my fuel is gonna feed from the tank into this reservoir simply by gravity. All right. And I thought about making this a bigger, basically cutting it off and making it a bigger hole, but you'll see why I didn't do that to this particular part. All right. Now this is the fuel pump carrier. All right. The fuel pump carrier has the fuel pressure regulator mount. This is the part where the fuel after the specific PSI comes out, and it just gets recirculated through this hose back into the fuel, either reservoir, like a backup reservoir where it keeps fuel into it, and it also pushes the fuel back into the tank, all the excess fuel. So this little wire down here is to stop electrical noises into the system. But since I eliminated all of this, that's not needed. Same thing with this lower section. Has another noise reduction system for the static. Since none of this is going to be in the tank anymore, I'm not concerned with static. All right. So inside this little half moon shaped thing is your actual fuel filter. All right. A lot of people mention that the sock that goes on the fuel pump is the fuel filter. That is not a fuel filter. All right. That is more like a fuel strainer. Either way, the fuel filter is actually inside this little section. All right. So what I have done to this particular part, which is where the big modification comes from, is this right here. So what I have done is that I cut off the entire section where that fuel filter goes, and I removed it completely from the system. All right. I have also removed this little see right here, this little section right here. I removed it because it does nothing. And then all of this fuel pressure regulator area is also gone. And what I left was the fuel pump holder. Now this is the what people call the Hellcat fuel pump, because it's the same fuel pump. It's the Walbro that goes in the Mopar Hellcat. So what I did to fit the pump and try to get it as high as possible, as you guys see here, is that I opened up this section right here with a Dremel in order for it to spread while I was pushing the pump into this spot. What that allows me to do is to drive the fuel pump as high as possible so that when I install the fuel strainer or the fuel sock, to not be crushed down against the bottom of the little reservoir. And I explain why I did that in a second. But like I said, it allowed for perfect fit. I mean, this socket's not round like the OEM one. So this little section it's been together for a couple months. The little section is tilted up, but it's not going to compromise any fuel flow. All right, and I was able to utilize the lower holder and install the sock as it's supposed to be installed. And you know, everything is in there, it's tight. That pump is not moving. All right, now the top section, right, if you can see right here, I cut, like I mentioned, that half moon looking thing, and this is where the fuel pump would get pushed into, because the fuel will go from the pump up and down through the fuel filter. And once it goes through the fuel filter, it will have either go up into the engine or back out into the fuel tank. So we're not using that anymore because that's going to be external. So what I did over here is that for the feed for the engine, all right, the output of fuel is hooked up, and I dremeled the inside of that area so it could sit flush. And I put the PTFE washer in there, and I also did the 8AN top, and also have the PTFE seal. All right, so that's the feed. My return simply is the original feed. All right, and I'm just going to use the factory car's return line, and it's going to feed back, return back into the fuel tank that way. And what's going to happen is, if you see how I got this routed, the fuel is going to go back into this reservoir, basically. So if my fuel level is low, for an example, and I'm taking a hard turn, this will get the return fuel, from the engine, back from the fuel rail, and it will dump into this reservoir and maintain a higher level of fuel so that I don't suck up air and be able to take a hard turn and not just go dry. All right, that's why I did it that way. So the only thing I haven't done yet is I need to secure this properly, so to try to avoid this coming off. All right, so now that I explained most of that, let's see, put this back in here. There it's locked. So this is what I mean. So I don't want this to be able to come off, so I will be doing something to make sure it stays right there so it can dump the fuel back in here. Now another thing is that, if you can see, I have all that room in there to hold fuel. All right, and I want that because I want to have more fuel in here, so that, like I said, if I'm doing an autocross and I'm taking a hard turn, I have enough fuel in here to maintain a fuel flow through to the engine. All right, now as far as the pump system, so my fuel level sensor is still going to be hooked up factory, and I'm still deciding how I'm going to route my power to the pump. All right, the wiring on this pump is high amperage, low voltage wire. Some of y'all may understand that. Same thing with the factory wiring. And when I looked at them, they are the exact same material in diameter. So that leads me to the assumption that I should be able to use the factory connection. Now, for those of you that know, that if you do that with the factory vehicle's wiring, which will be this plug right here, let me get this off. All right, this wiring is not strong to hold that amperage through this wire. This wire can hold the amperage, but this wire cannot. So I got to modify this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to depin these connectors for the power for the pump, and I'm going to see if I can repin new pins into here with a better gauge wire that can take the amperage that's going to be flowing to that pump. Because if I use my factory wiring on the car, it will potentially get overheat. Well, it's going to overheat because of the amp draw of that pump. and it would melt and cause an electrical, it's just going to short out and blow a fuse, and the car won't start. So to prevent that, I'm going to modify, this is my test mule, and I'm going to modify this in order to hook it up. Now the car is going to have an external power source for the pump, and the factory wiring from the car is going to activate the relay, so it will work as normal, but it will be powered through a higher amperage and better gauge wire. So that's what I'll be doing with this. So this is still in the works, and I still need to hook up these wires together so that I can plug them in through the factory thing. But like I said, I'm trying to figure this connector out first to see if I can actually do what I want to do, so I can use the factory plug. If not, I will just eliminate the 2 power wires and run my relay like I mentioned. And I will drill another hole at that point to run power wires to the pump directly from an external source that I'll be using. But this is what the current setup looks like. All right, this should give me more than plenty of fuel, and I'll have my 8 a.m. feed, and this is literally like a 6 a.m. return. So like I said, there's no need to run 2 bones when you can just run this one as a return. So I'm using this as a feed, and it's going to, the factory connection on the car is going to be a return. And then I'll maintain my my ventilation system for the tank, functional with the stock system. So this is just a quick explanation of how I'm doing my fuel system and how it's going to be set up. I've been working on this for about a year, but I don't like to modify my car more than one thing at a time. And since right now I'm doing the engine, I don't want to do modifications until that's complete. But now the engine replacement, because of the cracked engine block, is complete, and I ran into a problem where my car died on me. It just stalled out and shut off, and it will start up and idle roughly. So after removing the fuel injectors from the engine and taking them to a buddy of mine, they cleaned them out for me. I noticed that there was particulate in the fuel injectors because they were clogged. My fuel injectors barely have 2,500 miles on them. So if that's the case, that tells me that the filter element inside of here has broken up, because that's normal with these, and it got pushed. All right, and that's because the pump is before the filter, and then the filter after the filter it goes to the engine. So if stuff got into my injector, that tells me that this filter element in here has disintegrated, because it's like a cardboard in there. It has disintegrated and went through the line and clogged my fuel injectors. So this in my car, not this particular one, because this is spare parts that I'm using to modify and make my own fuel pump carrier. The particular filter in here has disintegrated, and it went through the lines and it clogged my fuel injectors. So this is my problem. So my car still has a good fuel pump, but that filter is what causing my fuel problem. Thing is that filter is not removable. You cannot take that filter out, and you cannot, like, if I wanted to just remove that filter element from in there and try to reuse this, I will have a hole in there, and if I cut it off, there's just a lot of work. It's better to do what I did with that and just modify it, unless you literally buy this brand new from Honda and reinstall it, and which defeats the purpose of a fuel system upgrade. So this is, to me, a better solution. I know that you cannot see in there very well, but we'll try. But that fuel pickup sock is not crushed, so it will have proper fuel flow, and I should have more than enough fuel to feed my engine with this setup. Right? I've seen a lot of videos of people posting, cutting, and doing all this stuff. There's a guy that even cut a hole down here. Like, defeats the purpose of having this. If you're gonna cut a hole down here, just take it off. Might as well find another way to carry your sensor down there, because you cut a hole down here, you got all the fuels, and if your fuel level goes down, it's just going to drain out, which you're trying to avoid this from being empty. This, you want the fuel to go in here, right? And you want the return to feed this like a bowl, so that the pump is always submerged in fuel and it doesn't suck in air. So by literally cutting a hole down here, and if you're driving and all your fuel goes to the side and it's picking up air, So why would you cut a hole in the bottom to drain all the fuel out of it like that? Like this is going to allow fuel to come out, yes, but it'll be a slow release of fuel versus, you know, a big hole in the bottom of cutting it down here, like I saw in a video. And I've seen other guys like, I mean, I've been looking into doing this for a couple years, and I've been looking at a lot of videos online, and I see where people just replace the pump, literally a straight freaking swap with the connect the factory connector on there, and it works fine and whatnot. But since I need now more fuel with my current setup, this is what I'm betting on, that it's going to work perfect. All right, and all I'm doing is re-engineering the fuel system on my 2000 Civic, which is a different carrier but same pump. So this is gonna work just fine. And you know, some people may say, well, what about this these little what you call them, static reducers? Well, the reason that this is gonna have static is because of the fuel flowing through all these stuff, you know, creating friction and creating static. So in theory, if I don't have this restrictor in here, I'm not going to create static. If I don't have, you know, this filter element in here creating restriction, I'm not going to have static. So the static filters are going to be relevant in this setup. All right. Now, is it possible for me to get noise inside in my electrical as far as like in my radio? Yeah, it's possible, but I doubt it. And if I notice a static sound after installing this through my speakers, then I know that I need to do something about the static in the fuel tank, and that's when I will re-engage into figuring out a way to reinstalling these noise blockers into this system, because it won't be hard. I just gotta figure out where would be a good spot to mount them, and then I just mount them to reduce noise. And if it doesn't work, I try it again until I figure it out. But for now, I'm 99% sure that I will not get any static noise in my electrical from doing it this way. All right. So this was a really long explanation for something simple, but a lot of people have commented and asked me about this right here. I've seen some people also like solder these points right here for E85. I might do it just to try it out, because my car, this fuel system will be flex fuel compliant. But my experience with these going out with ethanol is this module right here. All right, the ethanol will eat up at this metal right here, and then you just quit getting a reading. So I mean, I'm going to put the solder there just because people on the internet say that works, but I doubt it. But if this thing goes with E85 for a couple years and it still works, then I'll be come back and say like, yeah, that helped the problem. It hasn't caused an issue. But if I do this and the metal on this wears off and I quit reading my fuel level, then I'm going to come back and say, yeah, that's bogus. The problem is here, and the best thing to do is to get the sensor of a 9th gen Civic that can hold, that is resistant to higher ethanol contents, which is what they are, and that's what works. I've done it on other cars, installing the 9th gen level sensor, and they have worked fine. But I'm going to try to solder on this one, just so I can say later it doesn't work. It is what it is. All right. So that's my current fuel system setup that I'm going to be using in my tank. And I have everything for the fuel rail. As a matter of fact, let me just go get that stuff. Okay, so so this is what the fuel rail that I'm currently using on in my engine. All right. So what's gonna happen is this parts right here. I have this fitting right here that's got the 6 ANMPT. That's gonna go on this end. All right. And that is going to basically allow me to mount that line right there, which is going to go to my fuel pressure regulator. All right, I'm not using that one, that's for my other car, but it's the exact same one here. all right, which is a radium fuel pressure regulator. I won't be using the pressure gauge on that regulator once I mount it, because I'm gonna have it on the fuel rail. But on this one, it was on the fuel rail, and as you see, this is what I'm going to use as my fuel pressure regulator. And I love these because they have a fuel pressure dampener. All right, the fuel pressure dampener, so it will smooth out the pulses. And so basically, this is going to be swapped out for an 8AN NPT fitting that is going to go directly from a filtered line from my fuel pump, and then my return will go from here and into the firewall, and where the factory current feed is from. All right, on the firewall, I'm just going to install this right here. All right, and that's going to go basically from the fuel pressure regulator to the firewall. That's what this adapter is going to be for. I got random fittings and whatnot, but what I am missing, because I gave it away to a friend that's building his car, because I wasn't planning on installing my fuel system yet, is the line and the fittings that are going to go from here to my fuel rail. I don't have none of that. So I don't have the filter, and I don't have the lines, because these are the smaller lines. I need the bigger lines for the larger fittings. Even though, I mean, I can potentially use this line because the diameter is the same. Nah, that diameter is smaller, so never mind. I gotta get more fuel line, because this is all for all of these lines right here are for running basically from the back of the fuel rail to the fuel pressure regulator and to my firewall. That's what those lines are for, and all these fittings that I have here. So what I need is my feed line that's gonna go from the fuel pump to the fuel regulator inlet, and in between I'll have my fuel filter. So there's a shop nearby that I'm about to go to see if they have those components, and if they do, I'll buy it and then I'll start installing. If not, I gotta wait till Sunday, because my friend who I gave the fuel lines and the filter to says that since his car's not ready, he told me that I could just get the parts back and install it in my car, because his car's gonna take longer than mine to get on the road. But that's just how me and my boy works. We share parts, we give each other parts, we help each other out on our builds. So anywho, I'm gonna police this up, clean it up, and rearrange it the way I had it, and get it ready, because I gotta go to the shop and see if they got parts for my fuel system, so I can either, one, install these parts or decide to wait till Sunday. Peace.